Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy Nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, this is Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and you're joining us on the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. Today, we're joined by Samantha Horne. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about yourself, who you are, and why you do what you do.
So I am currently a coach. I work on empowerment. My specialty is probably mostly communication for people with themselves or with other things in the world, like money, or communication with people, other relationships, coworkers, anybody that they're not quite seeing their side of the story. So I work a lot with just kind of seeing all different sides of issues and maybe looking at things in a different light.
In communication, I mean, you and I kind of joke about that. Like, that's a big deal and super important.
It is. And even our relationship with inanimate objects and with, things in the world. Because everything we have is a relationship. Every single thing that we interact with is a relationship. My background originally was the massage therapy. I did that for over 20 years. And I really learned about how the body holds emotion, trauma, just all sorts of things. And that when I worked on the body, that evolved into coaching. So that's how I evolved.
So tell me more about how, like I said, we tease about communication being teasing literally, but very important too, like about how important that is. And a lot of people don't, I think, quite embrace that or understand, like communicating is everything. And like you had said, on personal levels, professional levels, inanimate levels as well. Tell us more about that, because that's fascinating.
I learned a lot about communication again when I had my own practice, massage practice, and learning how to talk to clients in a way that was safe, especially working again in people's bodies. Allowing somebody to have access to your body in that way can be really a lot for somebody. And so to make sure that they had a safe space and to feel as though they were allowed to let down their guard safely so that I could work on them became really focused for me. I started to really hone that skill. I grew up in a family that had terrible communication. There really wasn't any communication. I know everybody's familiar nowadays with like narcissism and narcissistic abuse. And my mom was quite unavailable and very narcissistic. And so I kind of went inward myself and I didn't understand like how to communicate with other people well. So when I went into massage therapy, I really had to learn because I was forced into like it's a very intimate environment. And so that's something for me now is really important because everybody is coming from a different place all the time. Everybody has their own perspective, their own life views, their own experiences. And it's really important that when people are communicating with each other, that they are taking into account what the other person's perspective is, like where they're coming from and maybe why they're coming from that. Not that you have to agree with it, but so that you can meet them somewhere, at least in the middle, especially when you're working with other people, whether it's your own business or whether it's in your career or whatnot.
Yeah. You bring up a fascinating point there because I feel like, again, even with this podcast, right? Everybody has a story to tell and everybody comes from somewhere that's kind of molded them to how they are today. whether they've embraced that or grown from that, or maybe not learned from that, like whatever their path is. But that's where I feel like that's a perfect tie into kind of money memories. What's a money memory for you, or a story that you're open to even sharing, that really kind of planted that seed for you and really helped mold your relationship with money as an adult?
Well, I would say for me, both my parents were actually from the silent generation. So that's the generation before the boomer generation. They had a lot of memories in their family of the Depression. They were also immigrants. Their parents were immigrants. So they had a lot of their own, money tightness, of scarcity mindset, which would mean scarcity mindset is, thinking you're never going to have enough, no matter what. So, but the fascinating thing for me was my mom she was frugal with me, but with herself, she wasn't. So she would come home with like a new pair of shoes, like really fancy, but then she'd always tell me, oh, they were on sale. But yeah, when I needed to buy, maybe I needed shampoo or something, mind you, at the time, shampoo was probably 99 cents a bottle. So it wasn't huge, expense. She would guilt me around it. She'd be like, oh, were you going through it too fast? Or you don't really need that. And then when I started playing sports, you need deodorant. It's just, it's kind of one of those things. And
It's a thing. It's an important thing. Yeah.
it is, especially when you get into puberty age. And she would she'd be like, oh, you don't really need that yet. So it was like all of these were needs, in my life. Basic needs, shampoo and, deodorant. You kind of need those things. I was made to feel as though they weren't really important. And then she would come home with something, whatever, a new cookbook. And it was to me, that was frivolous. Even as a child, I was like, well, I have to fight to get, the basic needs, but then you can come home with a $30 cookbook. And I understood like her point of view, like she works for it, but it was really wild. And then I didn't live with my dad. I visited him, but he was the kind of guy that would, you'd be in the room and he'd turn the light off on you and be like, you don't need the light. And I'd be like, yes, I do. I'm in here, and
I laugh because I understand. I'm like, oh yes, I've had that happen. My grandparents used to do that, and you're sitting in the black and you're like,
yeah, I need a little bit of light.
Yeah.
Break out the flashlight.
Totally.
So yeah, that kind of thing. That was kind of my upbringing. And so, as I got older, it was hard. I had a really hard time as a young adult doing anything for myself. I would have literal mental and emotional breakdowns just trying to spend $20 on anything. It was like crippling.
What do you think that your pivoting moment was with money, though? Because you're not that way now by any means. And how do you think that you basically kind of pulled yourself up from the bootstraps and moved forward and created a different relationship there?
My biggest, actually just a few years ago when I got a divorce, was probably the biggest. My ex was also very controlling with money, which isn't a surprise because we tend to fall into the same types of relationships that we had with parents or caregivers. And when I got divorced, I had to really become my own advocate. I had no choice. And then I actually, immediately after that, I lost my father. I'm an only child. So I was in charge of that whole estate and things. So I had to learn really fast that like I had to be my own best friend and advocate, and like no one was going to come help me or tell me what to do. It was really hard. It was one of the hardest times of my life, but it was actually one of the best things that ever happened to me, because now I'm so much more comforted in just my decisions, even though I still have moments where I'm like, really, what am I doing here? But in general, I feel good. And I know that like no one can take that away again.
I feel like that's a huge and empowering moment, right? And a lot of women, not to be gender specific on this, but it can be, right? Like I look back to the boomers even, right? The male normally took the lead in relationships there when it came to money as well. And back in that generation, there really wasn't a discussion of like, hey, here's what you should be doing with your money. You should be saving. You need to put it in a retirement account or whatever that looks like, right? Because that was one of those taboo subjects.
Right. And I think even my mom, I believe she said she wasn't allowed to have her own account until she was older or like in the 70s. I don't remember. It was something like her parents had it for like ever in her name, in their name. And then it was like attached to their account. Like a woman wasn't allowed to just have these things on their own. And so, yeah, so it's that's not very long ago.
Yeah.
And it's still, it's very much in people's unconscious. It's very disempowering, especially, for women, for sure. It can be.
And I feel like it's evolving, right? Definitely better than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago, or definitely better than 30 years ago. We still have a long ways to go, I think, moving forward by all means. But I think the education is definitely out there more than it ever has been for folks to kind of learn and evolve.
What you can see a lot, what happens is when a group of people or even, an individual has been very oppressed and then it's let up, it tends to swing all the way the other way. And then there's like a rebellion almost. So you're kind of seeing that more now. And again, nothing against like girl bossing, but you'll see this like hyper independence now almost of a female person, not just a woman per se, like born a woman, but just in that female presence of like, oh, I can do it now. Like I don't need a man. I don't need whatever, right? And going almost hyper the other way, independence. And that's typical for anything. There's a big swing to the other end.
Like the concept, the man is not your financial plan conversation.
Correct.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because it is like a pendulum. I feel like things swing hard in one direction before they come back to the middle sometimes. And we've been swinging, I think, on either side on many different views across the board. When do you think, from your perspective of just finding balance and the healthiness of balance and communication balance, because I feel like that's such an important factor to all that we're talking about.
And that's a big part of, again, what I do personally with people is help them find where they are in space. So like in the body, when you walk, there's nerve endings called proprioceptors, and they tell you where you are in space. That's how we don't ram into things. That's how our arms and legs move without us like flailing everywhere, right? And they tell us where we are in space. And so we each as individual people need to know where we are, like emotionally, financially, whatever, right? Everything where we are. And then we can like look outside of ourselves and kind of like see what we want to match us or to complement us. But until we figure out where we are in our own balance, then we start to look outside of ourselves for that balance. And that's when people start, doing these big swings. Either way, that answered the question.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually you brought up another question for me.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
Of course. But I feel like that's where people start looking for things truly outside of themselves instead of inside of them. Not to go down the path yet, but like money infidelities or life lessons or whatever that looks like. It is so important and pivotal as a learning opportunity for folks if they take it that way and go down that path, by all means. But when you start looking outside yourself, that's where it gets, I feel like, can sometimes really destructive when you're not really looking at where you are in that moment and how to make yourself the best version of yourself.
Yeah. And then ultimately the outside thing or person it's going to fail because they're not no thing or other person. I know it's very cliche, but really nothing outside of yourself is ever going to balance you. It might for a short time, but you have to really figure out your center point for yourself, like where you feel good in your life. Like if you feel good being at home, every night and reading books and being cozy and doing that and like spending your money on books, then fantastic. Like there's nothing wrong with that at all. And that's kind of what I like to do with people is to find out what their what their value system is. And a lot of us don't even know what our own value system is anymore because there's been so much external push onto what we should like, or, we should be living or should be doing. And then people get all this weird guilt and shame about it. And it just throws you off. Then you start looking.
Not to date myself, but I feel before, but I will. But before like social media was a thing, and before Instagram, famous was a thing, I feel like there was a different perspective for folks to kind of embrace and look at their bubbles. And now the bubbles for folks, their universes are vast because they don't end, because we can talk to anybody, anywhere, at any time, anywhere in the world. So I feel like that's a big factor. And I feel like maybe how people are looking at themselves and their environments more so now than ever before.
Right. Because before it just used to be the neighbors, right? Or people in your community. You didn't have comparison to too much bigger. No, not really.
Yeah.
Not unless you traveled a lot, but that's only a short period of time, right? That you're seeing that. You're not living in it.
It's more of like the keeping up with the Joneses, and now it's keeping up with the Insta famous. What is
with
that?
with everybody. It's impossible. Yeah.
And I think that's where the fascinating stories can come out too, of infidelities when it comes to money, whether that be something personal for you that you're not being, impeccable with, or something, different and relationship driven outside of you. What are some financial infidelities that you're willing to, either that you've experienced, that you're open to sharing, or that you've heard from others that you feel like folks could maybe learn from?
But you mean money at least to me, what I've looked at money as, what it's been modeled to me as through my life, as control and power. And so I've never looked at money that way. I feel like money, again, it's something else you have a relationship with. So I don't want the money to rule my life, right? Like I want to be in charge of the money and not let the money run me. And so I've seen, and a good example, as relationships have just been destroyed by money. They've been, like one person feels like the other person's using them for money, or everybody's heard the whole thing of being a gold digger, and I mean, sure, that could be something. As to me, again, as external and as fluid, money is fluid. It's like water. I mean, it's just energy. Oh, it is energy. Money is energy, especially now. Money is just numbers screen. We don't even have it, backed up by gold anymore. And so to me, it's a betrayal, and the infidelity is with like putting something such as money above a relationship or above a human being's life. That to me that's the biggest one I see. And I've had it done to me, and I see it all the time, and it hurts me. Like it hurts my heart for people to do that. Yeah. It's a hard one.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I mean, and we've heard all the stories. I've heard stories from clients, from just podcast as well, from people talking through what their, life is, how it's unfolded, and then how that's molded them. And it's fascinating to me. I know I wholeheartedly agree with you, right? Money should be utilized as a tool. It should be a tool. It should be a tool that you utilize to, potentially free up more time, because I feel like time could be the most valuable asset.
Time and health. I mean, if you ask anybody, any income, if you don't have your health, then money makes zero difference.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter anymore, because you can't buy your health. I mean, you can buy so much, right? You can get better health care and you can do things. But once you're ill or, take on a disease, it's that money can't buy it out of you, So,
fascinating.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your perspective. I always find our talks fascinating.
Yeah.
One thing I like to ask before we wrap things up, what are some tips or tricks that you utilize in your household to partners? Everybody has kind of their little nuances that they have behind the scenes. What are some that you're open to sharing?
I used to be a big couponer. I think now I do a lot of, as much as possible, whether shopping online or in store, I take advantage of cash back. So there's a ton of different, extensions you can get on your computer and get cash back for shopping in different stores. Credit cards, I look for the ones that have the best, again, cash back or benefits. And I try to utilize those. Again, with credit cards, paying it off. You got to make it worth. If you're not paying it off, the reward might not be there.
Pay it off if you're going to use it.
The biggest thing too, something that my children and I have adult children, but what we talk about a lot. So if you bring something into your home, let's say you're out shopping, you look at the item and you're like, am I okay with buying this and like letting it go at some point? Is it going to be okay for me? Like, am I really attached to this thing? Is it something I can buy? And then in, 3 months, I don't like it anymore. Will I be able to just let it go and not make a big deal out of it? And so if the answer is yes, then just get it, do the thing, feels great, whatever. And if the answer is no, maybe you need to figure out why you're attached to it. Like what is it that makes you feel like I need this item? And what is the feeling that's coming over you? Is maybe it really wasn't the item that you wanted. It was something that was making you feel at the time. And as a sidebar, this happens a lot with people with food addictions and other addictions. And so it's a good time to just take a breath and be like, is it fun? Is it something, I want at the moment, and then I'm okay letting go? Because here's the thing, every single thing you bring home, every item, I don't care how small it is, it's going to be a responsibility. You're going to have to find a place for it. You're going to have to dust it. You're going to have to deal with it at some point. And that's the point. Like at some point, you're going to have to deal with that item. I don't care what it is. A pen, you're going to have to find the drawer for that pen. You're going to have to, you know what I'm saying? So you really need to make sure it's something that you're okay with dealing with, of having another relationship with, because it's literally another relationship, another responsibility.
That is fascinating. And I've never even thought of it that way, but yeah. Is it
everything
cluttered? Is it going to be layered somewhere? Are you going to utilize it? Those are all, and if you think of that before you make a purchase, there's that moment, like you said, you take that breath.
So like when I purchased something, so I had to buy some chairs for a dining room table, right? The other ones broke. Okay, well, the chairs weren't that expensive to begin with, and I think they lasted about 4 years. So when they broke, I was like, no. And yes, it would have been great to spend more money, and maybe I could have bought a chair that was, $500-$600 each. But that's no guarantee to me that it was going to last either. I don't know, right? So if I spend on some nice looking chairs, maybe a couple $100 each, I'm okay within a couple of years of them breaking, right? Like to me, I'm not going to be upset if they break. I'm not going to freak out and be like, oh my gosh, my chair. And to, roll back, that was very much my upbringing, was that items were more important than humans. So if something happened to, my mom's $10,000 dining room table, she had hand carved in Africa, I don't know, like I would feel like that table was more important than me. So to bring in items into your space and into your life, you have to make sure that you're okay with it, what it's going to cost you emotionally too, right? To bring that in, not just financially. Like, what is it going to do to you? Are you going to freak out? Do you have 10 kids and you're bringing in a white couch because you've already, you're always wanted one? Well, might not be the best time to do that because you might get upset. And then, and it's kind of deep for buying something, but that's the biggest thing that I do. And then I'm okay with my purchases, whatever their cost is. So it's not really savings, but for me, that saves me emotionally. And for me, that's more important than the cost of the ticket price of it.
Fascinating. No, thank you so much for sharing. That's an interesting perspective that no one's ever shared before. So I think that it's definitely something to think through before you make a purchase.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, good. Well, thank you for making time. I so appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Platinum Talks Wealth. We hope to see you again soon.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.